If you're watching this video, I'm going to tell you why it is critical that you have two keys for your Saab 9.3. If you only have one key for your Saab 9.3 and you lose it, well, I can tell you right now, it is going to be much more costly and much more of a heartache than it is if you have one key and are just looking to program a second one. In this specific video, we'll be using the new generation Saab 9.3 as an example. However, this logic and thought process also applies to the old generation Saab 9.3 as well as the Saab 9.5. So let's start with the basic. How are keys programmed? Keys for the new generation Saab 9.3, old generation 9.3, and the 9.5 can only be programmed one way, and that is with a Tech 2. If you don't know what a Tech 2 is, it essentially was the dealer tool for Saab and GM back in the early 2000s. So if you have an existing key and are just looking to add a second key, process for that is pretty simple. It only takes about 15 minutes, maybe even less depending on how good the person is with the Tech 2. And cost for this, well, a new OEM key fob I believe is about $75, maybe a little bit more. If you want a blade, that will increase cost, but I always recommend people buy an OEM fob from Saab parts. You're also factoring in the cost of programming. If you get programming done from someone like me, meaning a random guy with a Tech 2, I generally charge about $75 for that. If you take it to a dealer or a Saab certified shop, they generally charge more. If you're interested in learning more specifics about the second key programming process, check out the video in the top corner. But let's discuss what happens if you lose your only key. If you lose your only existing key, you cannot simply buy a new key and have it programmed with a Tech 2 as we just discussed. Programming a new key to your car using that method requires the existence of an existing key. If you've lost your only key, you need not only a key, but also what's called a SIM, or column integration module. This is the module that sits right behind the steering wheel on the steering column on the new generation Saab 9.3. If we're talking about the old generation 9.3 or the 9.5, this is a twice module located in a different spot. I believe it's under the driver's seat. Contrary to what some might think, the SIM is actually what controls the security to the car and is what the key is married to. The key is not married to the ISM, which is the ignition switch module that you stick the key into. So again, let me reiterate, if you lose your only key, you need a SIM and a matching key. If you just buy a used SIM, it's really no better than your current SIM that you have in the car with no matching keys. So you need a used SIM with a used matching key. These can generally be found on eBay for $200, sometimes more or less, give or take the situation. And now let me also distinguish here that certain model years have different part numbers. So check Saab parts, make sure that whatever model year you have, the SIM that you're buying is the same part number and compatible. You can already see where this is kind of becoming much more of a headache than just simply buying a second key. Now, a new SIM can be programmed, removed, installed, programmed in about an hour, assuming everything goes smoothly. I have a full video going over the SIM replacement process up here in the top corner if you're interested on checking it out. If you get a new or a used SIM with a matching key, keep in mind you can also buy a new SIM. It is a much more expensive route, but if you buy a used SIM with a matching key, that does also still require Tech 2 programming. So Tech 2 is going to be required regardless of the route. And I'll also add that during the SIM programming process, it gives you the option to program additional keys. So typically when you buy a used SIM, it'll only come with one key. So I'd recommend, if you're in that situation, just buy a second key at that same time, and then you'll have two keys, you'll be good to go, and you won't ever have to think about this problem again. Let's discuss 4 frequently asked questions that I think will come as a result of this video. Number 1, where can I buy keys? Technically, for the new generation Saab 9.3, you can buy keys on a lot of different places. Saab parts, Amazon, eBay, for much cheaper than Saab parts, but I always recommend people get an OEM key fob from Saab parts. Second question, can I get a used key and just use that? I have a Saab 9.3 I sold previously and I have a spare key for it. Can I just use that? No, keys can only be programmed once on these cars, and that is why it's so important that if you do lose all your keys and you need to buy a new or used SIM. If you get a used SIM, you must have a matching used key to go with it. Number 3, this information is great, but where can I find a Tech 2? Well, if you're only looking at getting a Tech 2 for the sole purpose of programming key, I would recommend not investing in one. They're typically at least $300. You also need a separate laptop with security access. So if you're going to own the car for a long time, it would be a good investment. But if you don't want to spend that additional money, you can typically find either a Saab shop or a dealer in the few dealers that still exist. Or what I also recommend people do is post in their local Saab Facebook group. 9 times out of 10, there is someone within an hour or two of you that has a Tech 2 and can assist. But if you are looking at buying a Tech 2, AliExpress is quite honestly the best place to buy one. The cheap knockoffs are generally just as good, if not very close to the genuine GM Tech 2s, which are thousands of dollars. Lastly, number 4, and this one always makes me chuckle. Can a locksmith help me? No, a locksmith cannot help you with programming your key unless that locksmith has a Tech 2 with security access and a Saab card. In the end, my message and my argument is very simple. Get a second key now if you don't currently have one for a fraction of the price of a new SIM and matching key in the future if you lose your only key. You're gambling big time if you only have one key. It's not extremely common that these keys stop working altogether, but it can happen. I want to thank Jim Hickstein for putting together a tremendous article on SCNA's website. I'll link it at the top of the description. If you're interested in learning more about the cost breakdown, if my argument wasn't enough, read his article. It's fantastic and also has a lot of helpful links. But that's really all I have to say. We're gonna end on a bit of a mic drop. I'll use my gross looking key. Don't procrastinate, buy 2 keys. Get 2 keys, have 2 keys. It's not worth the risk and the gamble. Take it easy. Forget all the wrong